When your photos are blurry, do you blame the camera or the lens? Well, the problem could be somewhere else. Let's find out. Hello amigos, I'm Pablo Garcia, the engineer photographer. In the last couple of months, I had the opportunity to go photograph birds at Bosque del Apache National Wildlife Refuge here in the state of New Mexico. And I've been using primarily the Canon R5 with the great lens, the Canon RF 100 to 500. And I had very good results with this camera and this lens over the last year since I bought them. And I especially like the eye focus tracking on the camera and the reach that the lens provides. But in looking at the results of these two different times at Bosque del Apache, I noticed that many of the images that I thought I did everything perfectly, the images were just not sharp enough. So I was trying to figure out what was happening, primarily because I'm getting ready to go on another trip and I needed to know if I needed to send my camera, the lens, or even both to Canon to be inspected and potentially repaired. So like you, I went online and I started checking different forums. And yes, there were some people that had issues with either the camera or the lens, but then I saw a posting by a photographer that said that his problem had to do with the UV filter that he had added to the lens. And I asked myself, could it be that simple? Let me show you some of the images from Bosque del Apache and then I'll tell you what I decided to do. So here we have this image of this goose in flight, and I know when we're photographing birds in flight, there are way too many variables. You know, do you track the bird? Do you use proper technique? Do you have enough light? Was that enough shutter speed? And so on. But on this image, I was very confident that I did everything perfectly. You know, I have, in this case, I was even using the 1.4x extender, so I was a 700 millimeter f10 at 1/2500 of a second. So plenty of speed, plenty of light, and I should have been able to get a very sharp image. Now here it doesn't look too bad, but if I zoom in at 100%, you can see that there's detail that is lacking on the head and the body of the bird. It wasn't just sharp enough. Here this other image, in this case, this raptor doesn't move as fast as the goose, and this one was taken at 500 millimeters, just the lens without the extender, at f7.1 and 1/1600 of a second. Plenty of speed to capture a sharp bird in flight. But when you zoom in, you can see that the detail is just not there. Now, both of these images, I could go to Topaz Sharpen AI and perhaps add some additional focus. But I should have been able to get these two birds in sharp. Now, as I was telling you, birds in flight can be difficult. But I was having the same problem with the stationary birds. Here we have this raptor, and I took this image, and this one is at 500 millimeter f10, 1/1250th of a second. Again, plenty of speed. This needed to be really sharp. And if I zoom in at 100%, you can see that there's just detail that is missing from this bird. So something was wrong until I saw that posting that blamed the UV filter. And if you're like me, I put filters in all my lenses almost from the time I buy them. So I decided to run a test. What is in the test that I did? So in this test, basically, I set up my camera and lens on a tripod. I was trying to remove all potential sources of vibration. No vibration compensation on the lens, using a remote to focus and to activate the camera. Manual settings, you can see here, ISO 200, 1/200 of a second at f8. The lens at 500 millimeters at the maximum. And I repeated the test both at 11 feet, 3.3 meters, or at 43 feet, which is about 13 meters. I wanted to do different things. Now, the closer one at 11 feet, 3.3 meters, I didn't see a lot of issues. But when I went on the long distance, I started to see true differences on the images. Now, My test consisted of testing the lens without the filter and then with 3 different filters. I used the Tiffen 77mm UV filter. That's the one that I had on the camera, and that's my suspect. But I also had handy 2 different filters that I had in other lenses. I have a B+W F Pro and a Hoya NXT HMC UV. Both of those filters, I really never had any problems on the lenses that I was using them. So I'm doing a test on all 3 of them. Let's look at the images of that test. Here you can see the target. I was using this spider cow calibration target. I was focused right here. This is at the distance of 43 feet. Now, I'm going to show you the results. So this is the image at 100% without the UV filter. And as you can see, the numbers are very sharp. No problems. So I don't really have a problem with the lens. I had the focus point right here on the center, and the numbers on both sides of the 0 look very good. This is the image with the Tiffen filter, and you can see that the numbers are blurry. Now, I repeated each test twice, took 2 images, defocusing the lens, focusing, taking the shot, defocusing the lens, focusing, testing the shot. And both images are like this. The images are just not sharp enough, even though I'm focusing on the same point and there are no vibrations introduced during my test. Clearly, I'm having an issue with the Tiffen filter. This one is with the B+W filter, and as you can see, the numbers are sharp, perhaps not as good as without a filter, but I think these ones will be good enough, especially at 500 millimeters. And I wouldn't have any problems using this filter with this lens. This is the B+W. And here's with the Hoya filter. And this one was surprising to me because the Hoya filters also have a very good reputation. And as you can see, the numbers are also slightly blurry. So the best 2 options, at least with this lens, were no filter at all, or if I needed to use a filter, using the B+W filter. The Tiffen filter, I think, is going to go in the trash. So the question really is, should I use a clear filter or a UV filter with my lens? Let's look at the pros and the cons. On the pro side, we know that filters can provide a degree of protection to the front element of your lens, especially if you bump the lens and you're not using the hood. And I can tell you, at least in one occasion where I was walking in a canyon, I bumped my camera and I damaged the filter, but my lens was protected. So it can happen. It offers some protection, but if you use the hood, the hood by itself will give you the protection that you need. Some filters can help you cut the atmospheric haze, especially in some situations where it's a lot of humidity in the air, and the filter can help you get some better images. If you're still using film, a lot of the film out there is very sensitive to UV, so using a UV filter can help protect your film. Now, on the cons, lens manufacturers don't design the lenses to have another piece of glass in front of them, right? They design the lenses to be used the way you bought them. Otherwise, they would have provided an additional filter or element themselves. Lenses are not designed to have something in front of them. As you can saw in my test, the filters, whether it's clear or UV, can affect the performance of your lens. Especially as you saw long telephotos at the extreme, I didn't have as many problems when I was using my lens on the shorter end, and wide angle lenses can have similar problems. One, because the ring around the lens, if you're around 24 or 14 millimeters, can introduce some vignetting, but also you can get some distortion because the filter is bending the light, and that could be more noticeable at the extreme wide angles. If you drop your lens and you have a filter, you may even have more damage. Usually the glass on the filter is not as hard or resistant to drops as the elements on the lens. Yes, you have some degree of protection, but if you drop it, if you shatter your filter, that can actually give you more damage on the front element of the lens. And digital cameras already have UV filters built in right on top of the sensor. So a UV filter is really not needed. So for me, what am I going to do? Through this test, I learned not to automatically put filters on all my lenses. I think I'm just gonna remove the filters and have a filter with me in case I need it. When would I need it? If there is a lot of dust, or if I'm moving around and I want to add a degree of protection to the lens, I may put the filter on. But I'm breaking the habit of automatically adding filters on top of my lenses. If you're gonna use a filter, quality, quality, and more quality. There's even a guide called the 10% guide, and the 10% guide is that you should be willing to spend or invest up to 10% of the value of the lens on a quality filter. Now, you're buying a lens that is $1,500, $2,000, means you're going to be putting $150 to $200 on a filter. But again, if you're spending that much money on a lens, you don't want to end up with those type of blurry photos like the ones that I show you. And if you're having problems, don't assume right away that the problem is with your camera or the lens. I was this close of sending my camera and lens to Canon, and I was getting a little nervous because I'm getting ready for a trip and I didn't know if I was going to be able to get it back on time. And finally, understand the impact that those filters are having on your images. Set up a test. It's not difficult to do. Do the test, compare images, and know for a fact whether or not a specific filter with your specific lens is going to give you a problem. I recently rented a Canon 1435 f4 lens for an upcoming trip, and guess what? It came with a filter, with the Tiffen UV filter, the same filter that is being giving me the problem. Now you know I'm not going to be using that filter on this upcoming trip. It's just not worth the hassle. If I need a filter, I'll put the B+W filter on it. Otherwise, no filters for me going on. Well, amigos, I hope you liked this video. Some insights on the use of filters on our lenses. I'll leave you here with this video I did recently. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Send me your comments. Give me a thumbs up. Help me grow the channel. And I'll see you next time.